This Victorian house in Fort Collins offers a rare glimpse into late 19th century life on the western frontier. The Avery family lived in this home for more than 80 years, making it a true pioneer-era time capsule, one that traces the growth of Fort Collins alongside some of the people who helped shape it. But like many early frontier success stories, especially during a time and place where law and order were still developing, controversy found its way into this family's history that was never fully resolved. Today, we're touring the Avery House room by room, exploring the architecture, the design choices, authentic Victorian furnishings and decor, and also getting to know the people who once lived here through the moments and memories that unfolded within these walls. Hi, I'm Allie, and welcome back to Fab Little Dish, where we celebrate the beauty of vintage home. If you love historic house tours and keeping their stories alive, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. Now let's head on over to Fort Collins, Colorado. The Avery House was built in 1879 by Franklin and Sarah Avery. They had 3 children who all grew up here. Originally, the home cost $3,000 to construct, but as the Avery family grew, so did the house. The house is a striking example of high Victorian Gothic architecture, constructed using locally quarried sandstone, a material choice that immediately set this house apart from other Victorian homes I've seen. Stone homes weren't common here yet, and choosing it was both practical and symbolic, signaling permanence in a town that was still very much in its early stages. As their family grew to include 3 children, Edgar, Ethel, and Marietta, the house also expanded, evolving right alongside with the family and the town itself. What you're seeing today isn't a single moment preserved in time. It's a layered history of a home that changed as Fort Collins did. Franklin Avery was born and raised in Cayuga County, New York. He earned a degree in civil engineering when he also met his future wife, Mrs. Avery, Sarah Edson. At 20 years old, Franklin was accepted as a member of the Union Colony and traveled west to establish Greeley, Colorado. After surveying Greeley's streets, he did the same for Fort Collins. He arrived there in the early 1870s and quickly became one of the town's most influential figures. Avery worked as a surveyor, laying out much of Fort Collins's original street grid. The wide streets and orderly layout traced directly back to Avery's work. He later founded the First National Bank of Fort Collins, played a key role in early water and irrigation projects, and helped establish the infrastructure that allowed the town to grow beyond a small frontier settlement. The Avery family lived in this home for more than 80 years, spanning multiple generations. During that time, Fort Collins grew from a small frontier town into a more established city, with Franklin Avery playing a direct role in shaping its early development. And fun fact, the historic streets you see in Old Town Fort Collins helped influence Disneyland's Main Street USA. One of the original designers grew up here and brought photos of this town back to Walt Disney to use as part of the inspiration for that iconic entrance street. Such a cool little detail. But the Avery story isn't without controversy. Franklin's younger brother, William Avery, also came to Fort Collins seeking opportunity, and his life ended under suspicious circumstances. In 1890, William died of what appeared to be a stomach illness, but just 12 days later, his widow secretly married his business partner. According to diary entries kept by Franklin and Sarah's son, Edgar, this household was under enormous stress as William became ill. His condition and the aftermath that followed weighed heavily on the family and caused a lot of tension. I mean, understandably so, if your sister-in-law and her new husband tried to kill your brother for his money, right? An investigation later determined that William had died from arsenic poisoning, but because it couldn't be proven whether it was murder or suicide, no one was ever convicted. It's an unsettling story that was never fully resolved, and one that quietly followed the Avery family for years. It's a reminder that even in prosperous, forward-thinking families, life on the frontier could be very complicated, especially when laws were being developed and there wasn't a lot of structure in place yet. But because of Edgar's first-hand written accounts, we're able to get a sense of the heaviness that once filled this home. As soon as you enter, you're greeted by a portrait of Franklin Avery's grandfather, Benjamin Avery. And just look at this beautiful Victorian staircase. At the time the house was first built, the staircase ran in the opposite direction from where it does today. As more rooms were added on, the Averys were ready to replace the original staircase, and my tour guide was telling me that it's very possible they ordered this staircase from a craftsman catalog. Can you imagine being able to order a staircase like this? It's unreal. This is the dining room, and where the Avery family would have gathered and entertained guests. Just look at this built-in china cabinet. Originally, this would have been a back door of the house, but it was turned into a china cabinet when the kitchen was built. Some of the china on display here actually belong to the Averys, like this little mustache cup, which I found so adorable. The table is set with the kind of china, glassware, and silver that you would normally expect in an authentic Victorian-era upper-class home, including pieces like this chocolate pot, which was an essential part of formal Victorian dining and tea time. And look at this gorgeous rose-colored glass in this display cabinet. This is cranberry glass, which was especially popular during the Victorian era and gives you a sense of the decorative details that families like the Averys surrounded themselves with in their homes. It doesn't feel overly grand in here, but it does feel intentional. This was a space designed to signal comfort, refinement, and social standing, without being too flashy, of course. Before entering the kitchen, we're in the pantry, which was originally the back porch of the house. The museum has shelves filled with period-appropriate gadgets and useful household items from the time. There's also a telephone in here. When the first citywide telephone system debuted in 1893, the Averys were included in the original 50 subscribers. This would have been a party line that they shared with their neighbors, which meant that they could eavesdrop on local calls and get the latest gossip around town. The party line was also useful for emergencies, although I feel it was often used less for that purpose. And here's the kitchen, which gives us a more personal look at everyday life inside the house. Mary Eck was the main servant of the home. She had a small room behind the kitchen, and she worked long hours keeping this house running, along with the rest of the hired staff. And here you can see a truth panel, or a patch of the original wallpaper. This was used to carefully reproduce the wallpaper on the walls throughout the house, giving us a sense of what Franklin and Sarah's taste looked like. This is the back parlor, which was added onto the house in 1893 and would have served as a study at the time. By this point, Franklin Avery was deeply involved in shaping Fort Collins. In fact, in 1882, he helped found one of the city's earliest banks, so it's easy to imagine this room functioning as a kind of a home office, where business visitors would be received and meetings would take place. This door right here would have made that especially convenient, but this wasn't just a working space. In the evenings, this is where the family gathered and spent a lot of their time together, making it one of the most lived-in rooms in the house. This desk actually belonged to Franklin Avery. It was a family piece he brought with him from New York, passed down through generations, and it was eventually donated back to this house by his grandson. Sitting on top of the desk is something very special, the diary of Franklin and Sarah's son, Edgar. In 1890, when he was 12 years old, Edgar made a diary entry every single day for an entire year. It gives us such an intimate glimpse into daily life inside this house in the late 19th century through the lens of a young boy. This chess set here also belonged to the Averys. Edgar mentions playing chess with his papa over and over again in that diary, which makes this feel incredibly special. And finally, take a look at this turret radiator. Very innovative for the time, and also this is an example of how well the Averys utilized every inch of space in their home. This is the front parlor, which has been decorated in a very elegant Victorian Christmas style. The front parlor was added around 1883, and this was the most formal room in the house. This is where the Averys would have welcomed and entertained guests. And unlike the rest of the home, children were generally not allowed in here. The front parlor was all about presentation. This was the space meant to show visitors who you were, what you valued, and the little special things that were expensive and meant a lot to you. Rooms like these would have been filled with the family's most treasured possessions, decorative figurines, meaningful objects, and often the family Bible, items chosen very intentionally and meant to be seen. One of the most fascinating pieces in this room is the portable Edison gammophone from around 1905. It played and even recorded sound using wax cylinders, which feels almost magical when you hear it. Seeing something like this here is such a reminder of how quickly technology was changing at the turn of the century. This house started as a Victorian frontier home, and over time it adapted, embracing modern inventions while still holding on to tradition. This room was Edgar Avery's bedroom, and it's been styled to reflect what a child's space might have looked like at the end of the 19th century. The toys you see scattered around are similar to what Edgar himself would have played with during the time when he wasn't writing in his journal. This bedroom, along with the closet and the bathroom, was added around 1881, at the same time the kitchen was expanded below. You can really feel how the house grew around the family's needs as time went on. The sleeping porch you see connected to this room was added on later, which was very common in this period, especially out here, where fresh air was considered essential for good health. This room is the sewing room, and it was actually one of the original rooms of the house. Like many spaces in Victorian homes, it wasn't limited to just one purpose. Over the years, this room would have functioned as a sewing room or a guest room. Sarah Avery's mother often stayed here when she came to visit, and those visits weren't short. Travel from New York to Fort Collins took weeks, so family members would stay for months at a time. Built-in storage like this wasn't always standard yet, and it speaks to how forward-thinking the Averys were when it came to comfort and functionality. This is the Avery Bedroom, and upstairs is where the house's layout really starts to get interesting. Because of the steep roofline, the hallway and the shape of the rooms up here aren't perfectly symmetrical. You can really feel how the architecture follows the roof. The way the windows project outward almost creates these little pockets of space, which makes this floor feel very different from the rooms below, and almost magical, to be honest with you. This room was shared by Franklin and Sarah Avery, and this matching 3-piece mahogany bedroom set actually belonged to the Avery family and is original to this room. It was passed down to their granddaughter and eventually donated back to the house. There's also a small haircraft project displayed here. A hairwork piece was very common to see in Victorian homes. It was often made to commemorate loved ones or just symbolize your family and its legacy, and this one in particular is tied to the wider Avery family story, including the period surrounding the suspicious death we mentioned earlier. My tour guide explained to me that this was made using hair from members of the sister-in-law's new family. So once she married her new husband, this is the haircraft representing their new family legacy. So it's a little strange to see this in here. It does have a heavy weight to it, this piece in the room, but it's a quiet detail and a powerful one. This was the bedroom shared by the Avery daughters, Ethel and Marietta. On top of the desk is a piece from the Chautauqua movement, a late 1870s response to the growing national interest in education. By turning the knobs at the top and bottom, children could scroll through lessons on hundreds of topics, everything from drawing and letters to music, basic math, and even Morse code. It's such a nod to how seriously education was taken back then. And tucked behind the bookshelf is this little cubbyhole, another example of how thoughtfully space was used in the house. It was likely meant for storage, but family stories say Ethel and Marietta used to play back here. It's a small detail, but it makes the space feel very familiar. This room is known as the tower bedroom. Originally, it would have served as a guest bedroom, taking advantage of the unique shape of the house. Today, it's used to display rotating costume exhibits that reflect the years the Avery family lived here, with fashion spanning more than 80 years. It's a really beautiful visual way to see time passing in this house and to imagine the different generations who lived here. Walking through the Avery House, you really feel how much of Fort Collins' early story is wrapped up in this one home. This wasn't just a beautiful Victorian residence. It was a place where ambition, family life, business, and reputation all lived under the same roof. Over more than 80 years, the Avery family watched the town grow around them, and in many ways, helped shape what it became. That's what makes the Avery House such a powerful time capsule. You're not just seeing Victorian design, you're experiencing a family navigating through everyday life, challenges, and celebrations on the western frontier as Fort Collins itself was taking shape around them. If you enjoyed this look inside the Avery House, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. It really helps support historic homes like this and helps keep their stories alive. And if you love historic house tours, Victorian interiors, and love hearing about the stories layered in between these walls, make sure to subscribe. There's a lot more coming your way. Until the next one, my friends, keep celebrating the beauty of vintage home. Au revoir.